What would you do? What would you do if Jesus came to spend some time with you?
Well, hello, folks. Pastor Rocky. Hope you're doing great today. Well, today is the Sunday before Easter. And in our area, we've had some snow, and that's not unusual up here because we're at a high elevation, and sometimes snow comes at odd times. But we press on, and as we continue to go on, we think about the Sunday before Jesus was crucified. And, of course, that's going to be talked about today in our service as I talk about the crowd, what the crowd's part was playing in the situation of Jesus Christ. It's going to be very important. In 1956, Porter Wagoner wrote a song, and it was very successful, entitled, "What Would You Do If Jesus Came to Spend Some Time With You?" And in that song, he says a number of things that would bring to mind some important situations in our own life. He says, would you have to burn magazines? Would you put the Bible where they were? Would you change the way that you talked? Would you do things different? Would you be glad when he left? And he went through this litany of things. If you haven't heard that song before, perhaps you should listen to it. What would you do if Jesus came to spend some time with you? Well, I'm in the book of Luke, chapter 19. One of my favorite stories, the story of Zacchaeus. Now, Zacchaeus, you remember, was a tax collector, and he was a guy that wasn't on the up and up, really. He had robbed people. In the Bible days, if you were a tax collector, Matthew, you remember, was a tax collector. If you were a tax collector, you worked for the Roman government, and you also got to charge what you wanted to. Fella come by with a wagon, a couple of mules, and maybe the regular rate might have been, let's just say, $2. As a tax collector, you could have charged him $5, and you could have pocketed the $3, give the government the $2. And that was legal in that weird sort of way. So Zacchaeus was a tax collector, and Jesus is walking along, and Zacchaeus is a little man. You know that song, right? Zacchaeus was a wee little man was he. Well, in the process of that, he climbs this sycamore tree, and he's looking down, and he's checking out what Jesus is doing, and Jesus knows he's up there. In fact, Jesus calls up there to him, and he says, when he looked up, he said, "Zacchaeus, make haste, come down, for today I must abide at your house." Now, that's an interesting point to the song that Porter Wagoner wrote in 1956. What would you do if Jesus came to your house? Now, that's a very important question, and a very challenging question, may I say, because there's a lot of people in the confines of their house with the doors closed and the shades pulled. Well, maybe they do some stuff they oughtn't to do and still claim to be a Christian. And it's an interesting concept because Jesus comes into Zacchaeus' house and he feeds him, and they have this. And then Zacchaeus stood up and said, "The Lord has spoken to my heart." I mean, Zacchaeus gives a testimony. I mean, a good testimony. When they saw what all happened and what was going on, they murmured. You know, the crowd did when they saw Jesus going to a sinner's house. They said, what's this guy about? Who's this fella anyway that's going to this sinner's house? And of course, Jesus loved sinners. Thank God, or I wouldn't be here if he didn't. But now listen to this. Zacchaeus stood up and said to the Lord, "Behold, Lord, the half of my goods I give to the poor, and if I've taken anything from any man by false accusation, I restore them fourfold." And this is what Jesus said. Jesus said, "This day is salvation come to this house, forasmuch as he also is a son of Abraham." And it's interesting. It's interesting because Zacchaeus was in a situation where he wanted to see Jesus, but he didn't want Jesus to see him. Now think about that for a second. He's in a situation where he wants to see Jesus, but he really don't want Jesus to see him. Now, he was a short guy, for sure. He could climb the tree to get above the crowd, for sure. But he wasn't probably too interested in, striking up with Jesus. He'd rather look at him from a distance. Zacchaeus wanted to see Jesus, but really didn't want Jesus to see him. A lot like people do when we shut the door and pull the shades and we don't want Jesus to see us, but we want to see him in the time of need. When there's a problem, there's a challenge. The issue that we face, however, is that closing the door and pulling the blinds don't keep Jesus out. Jesus is everywhere. And you see, Zacchaeus understood something about Jesus that was authentic, to the point that he began to deal with the most precious thing that he had. And for Zacchaeus, that was his resources. And he said, I don't care. I found the greatest prize. I have found Jesus Christ. How wonderful is that? How great could that be? That you are in a situation where you could say, I don't care about anything except Jesus Christ. And when Zacchaeus made that proclamation, he said, I'm going to give things back that I've taken falsely. The Lord has been in my home and changed my life. Now I want to ask you this question. What would you do if Jesus came to spend some time with you? Porter Wagner's song in 1956 said a few things, as I mentioned earlier, about maybe burning some magazines, maybe putting the Bible where they'd been, maybe change your conversation a little bit, putting out your best dishes, whatever. Maybe be happy when you see him leave. Well, he's not going anywhere. He's here, and he's here to stay. He lives in his people. And his people, no matter what we do, whatever we do, or wherever we go, or whatever happens, he's right there. He's right there in the midst of it. He sees it, he hears it, he knows it. And beloved, one of the things that we think about as we come into this week before Easter, what would we do? What would we do if really and truly we understood the relationship that Jesus has given to us? Well, he says to Zacchaeus, he says something wonderful. He said, salvation today has come to this home. And he was a Jew. He was one of the children of Abraham, and that's who the Romans employed. They employed the Jews because it was a Jewish nation. And when the people come through, they dealt with Jews instead of Gentiles. So Zacchaeus knew he was wrong. Jesus said he is a son of Abraham. He's recognized his wrong. And then this is what Jesus says, for the Son of Man is come to seek that and to save that which is lost. Now, how in the world can you get any better than that? So, I suppose the question on the floor this morning would be, Jesus is here, inside the closed door, inside the pulled drapes. He's here. What are you doing? If you do it right, God will bless you for it. God bless you. We love you, and goodbye.
What would you do? What would you do if Jesus came to spend some